Welcome back to yet another episode. It's so good to see you all again, and we're almost at 1,000 subs. Thank you for everybody who's been tuning in and supporting me and this channel. Let's see if we can get past that 1,000. I'm your friendly neighborhood coach Jose, and in this episode we're going to break down the single-handed backhand, in particular Roger Federer's backhand. Let's go. I'm going to break it down so it's nice and easy and simple to understand. There's going to be three main parts. There's going to be the preparation, so the take back, and then there's going to be the forward swing, so as he swings forward to the ball, and then there's going to be the follow through, the finish. So this, in my opinion, is what really makes the Federer backhand, the look of it. Part one, the backswing or the preparation phase. Now, we're going to make sure we have the right grip. Now, Federer, he uses the Eastern backhand grip. Now, if you're not sure about grips, I made a whole big video about grips that I'll link up the top here, and you can check that out. Now, you don't have to use this grip. There's a little bit more of an extreme grip where you can should be able to generate more spin, which is a little bit more over the top. So strings facing more down. But I'm going to use the Eastern backhand grip for this one. We've got the grip sorted. We're going to look at the stances. Now, I've seen Patrick Moratarglou, I can't say his name properly, I'm sorry Patrick. He explains the dominant eye. Now, if you're not sure what that is, make a little circle and then look through it. Now, if you use your left, what you're going to make sure that you do is you slightly more chest open, slightly. I'm not saying full chest open to the court, just slightly. That way you can turn your head and have your dominant eye looking at the ball. And if you use your right, then stay side on, like Roger does. I'm going to use this preparation phase as a right eye dominant, so staying very side on. So if you're left eye dominant, just turn slightly more, okay? So, grip sorted. Now, with the stance, we're going to make sure that our front foot, so for me, I'm a righty, my right foot is going to be facing a little bit more pointed towards the net. It's not going to be directly to the net, but it's going to be slightly more, 45 degrees. The reason for this is so we can go forward. If you watch Federer, he goes heel to toe. Now, why is heel to toe so important? Heel to toe is important because it's the weight transfer. It helps you to go from back to forward. Okay, a little bit of like a rocking action. If you go flat down on your foot, it's easy to push back or not to really come over the top. I see a lot of players, they'll hit and they'll jam up. I don't know any other way to explain it. They sort of stiffen their leg up and freeze rather than to flow over the top. I hope this makes sense and easy to understand so far. Now let's make sure we get this back swing of the racket. The way we take our racket back, or Federer takes his racket back, I should say, is he uses his non-dominant on the throat of the racket right here. The reason for this is to help his racket or pull his racket back. Okay, that way when he takes his racket back, his shoulders or the unit turn is starting to happen here. Now, this is important because this is part of how you're going to generate power, by turning and then releasing. Making sure that you control with your left, so pull. The right is just there for a bit of support right now. It does nothing. It's just holding the racket. The left is pulling back, and then what happens next is you just let it drop down, okay? Or you can help with your left to drop it down. Now, when you drop, this is where it gets a little bit of, depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to hit the ball flatter, then you don't need to drop it down as far, okay? If you're trying to hit the ball with more spin, then you're going to want to drop the racket head so it's below the wrist. Does that make sense? So if this would be level, okay, this would be level here, and if I wanted to get more spin, I'm going to drop it so now it's below the wrist height. Okay, so that way when I do hit the ball, I can brush it up a little bit more. You'll notice Federer does this anytime the ball is a little bit lower than the net height. He really gets under and whips up the back of the ball. So we've got that backswing. So taking the racket back. Now, when you take that racket back to the fullest, if you watch Federer very closely, he looks over his right shoulder. If you're a lefty, you'll be looking over your left shoulder. But I'm a righty, so I'm going to be looking over my right shoulder to see the ball that's coming. And I've got my racket back using my left to control it and drop, and make sure at the bottom of the drop here, the butt cap. Okay, this is very important. The butt cap is facing directly to the ball. Now, why is that important? That's important for the lag and the whip that we're about to use. When we get to the ball, we want to be able to whip through, okay? If I've got that facing forward already, what will happen is it becomes more of a push. It's not really a whipping action, it's been more of a pushing action. I can still use my wrist, but I lose that whip effect. I hope this is making sense so far. I'm trying to make it, describe it as simple as possible. If I don't make sense, please let me know in the comments below and I'll try and word it out a little bit easier for you. That's the backswing sorted. Now it gets a little bit more complex of the forward swing. We've got the backswing sorted, we've got the heel to toe action, and now I'm going to start to explode. So I'm going to use my hips. So the way we use our hips in tennis is we rotate forward. Okay, so my left hip is currently facing towards the side fence. I'm going to try and make it face towards the court a little bit more here. Now, Federer doesn't have a huge turn, but he does use his hips. Let's have a look at it very closely here. So when he hits his backhand, his left hip definitely moves forward. Now his right hips is a little bit more closed off, but at the end of his swing afterwards, he does come forward and finish and follow through with both hips. We're going to get that backswing. Our hip's going to start to come forward with our arm driving too at the contact point, which is right out in front. Now this is where I have a little bit of difference with Patrick. Patrick is saying, I think in one of his videos with the single-handed backhand, is if you're a right eye dominant, you want the contact, or left eye dominant I should say, you want the contact point to be closer. And if you're right eye dominant, you can have the contact point further in front. Now I disagree with this. I believe if your contact point is closer to you, you're going to struggle because that ball is later and you're going to be putting more tension into your arm and find it difficult to drive through the ball. Unless you've got a huge backswing and all that power is coming through here, even then you're going to feel a little bit of that tension. Whereas when you contact right out in front of you, you can easily flow and come through your shot and have a lot less tension and ease of use, easy follow through, like Federer does on his backhand. But anyway, I don't want to get into a big controversial blah 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 thing with Patrick. I know he's a fantastic coach and I agree with a lot of the things that he says. This one thing with the contact point, I just disagree with a little bit. But everybody's got their own opinions. If you're a professional coach, I'll leave it to you to do your coaching, okay? This is how I coach my students and I'll leave it at that. What we're going to do here is we're going to make sure that we get that hip drive, our swings coming forward. Now, depending on how much spin you're wanting to use. If you're wanting to use a lot of spin and get that ball to arc up and down, you're going to make sure you get that drop and then start to come up when you contact the ball. If you're wanting to hit that ball flatter and harder, you're not going to have as much of that drop. Okay, this is where it comes into a little bit of the difference. I'm going to describe it in terms of both. So if I'm getting more spin, I'm going to get down. Okay, so the bottom of the racket head is now lower than my wrist. That way it gets under, and then when I contact, I'm coming under and up the back of the ball. Then for a flatter backhand, I'm going to come more straight, more level on, and then when I contact the ball, I'm still coming up, okay, but I'm just not hitting low to high as much. So that is the forward swing. So it's getting that hip drive forward, the racket coming out, extending all the way, okay, having your arm extending. One thing I did forget to explain in the preparation phase is Federer has his arm bent. Now that's good because that way you can have that whipping effect. If you've watched Patrick Mouratoglou's videos, he talks about that whipping action on the backhand, which is very important. You need to have that whip. If you're too tense and having your arm stiff, you're going to be very stiff throughout the swing. You want to make sure you have that loose whip effect. So bending the arm and then coming down, yes, you straighten your arm, but that's to follow through, okay? That's to contact the ball early and follow through. This back here is all about staying loose so you can whip out in front. I hope this is making sense. Now let's talk about the follow through. The follow through is the most iconic look for the single-handed backhand, and what I feel, in my personal opinion, what makes the look of the Federer backhand. Federer, what he does exceptionally well is he stays side on through his backhand. He keeps his chest facing to the side. Now, if you look at someone like Stan Wawrinka, his is different. He turns and he opens up his chest to the court. He has a lot more hip and body drive compared to Federer. Federer gets a little bit more unit turn back, and then he stops his chest and his hips at that contact point and comes through like so. After the swing has finished, he then opens up and becomes ready for his next shot. But we're just going to talk first about that follow through after contact. So we've got that heel to toe action. My left arm is controlling my racket back here. I'm dropping so the butt cap is facing towards the ball that's coming onto me, and I'm stepping or I'm leaning forward with my hip coming forward, butt cap facing forward, extending the arm to contact, and then we're getting that whipping action. Now this is where it becomes very important as well, is where your strings are facing. I don't want to forget this part. Make sure that when you hit the ball, your strings are facing towards the other side of the court. Too many times I see beginners especially, they'll hit their backhand and their strings will come around and face towards the side fence. We want to make sure that the whole way through, if you look at Federer's backhand, even when he finishes, his strings are up, so the racket is more vertical, but it's still facing towards the audience, towards you. Okay, he's not coming around where the strings are facing towards the side fence. He's always keeping it straight on there. It's never across. Okay, that little difference in the wrist. I hope you can see that and understand what I'm trying to say there. We've got to that contact point, and that's when we're whipping up, so brushing the ball low to high. And as we do this, our racket's moving up, up, up high, so we can get plenty of spin on the ball. Even if we're trying to hit the ball a little bit flatter, we want to make sure we encourage that ball to go up over the net a little bit. We don't want to hit too low to the net, because then that's high risk. Now, the other thing that makes the Federer backhand the backhand that it is his left arm, or if you're a lefty, right arm, okay, is how far that goes back. Now, I like to describe it as a squeeze behind you. So if I had a pencil, if I gave you a pencil and I said, put it in your back, right in the middle, and try and squeeze it together and don't let it drop. That's what I'm talking about. So when he hits his backhand, his left arm, I hope you can see it behind me here, is coming back while his right arm is following through. That helps him to balance, stay side on, and flow through the backhand. Otherwise, what happens is you open up a little bit more. Like Stan Wawrinka, for example, I believe he keeps his left arm a little bit more in front of him here and helps him to open up a little bit more. Now, I don't teach this way because I see so many mistakes with beginners. They'll come across too far and shank the ball all over the place. I like to teach the Federer backhand first because it's a lot easier to drive through the ball, and then later on, once that flow is there, then we can work a little bit more on opening up if players want to try and generate more power with it. Stay on topic, stay with this video. We're talking about the Federer backhand, where he makes sure that he comes through and chest stays to the side, and left arm or non-dominant arm is pulling back or making that squeeze behind your back. And that is what makes the Federer backhand. I'm sure if I've missed anything in this video, somebody's going to let me know in the comments below. And if there's anything I didn't explain thoroughly and you don't quite understand something, just let me know in the comments below and I'll try to get around to replying to you guys. One thing I know I missed out in terms of the preparation phase and the forward swing is the constant flow. I wanted to make sure I hit on this point. The modern game of tennis is all about constant flow, constant momentum. I know in traditional, in a little bit more pre-90s tennis, where there was some pauses within swings, players would take their racket back and sort of hold it there, or take their racket back and hold it there. Now, in the modern game, we have constant flow. So in part of that preparation phase, the racket never stops. So it comes up, it drops down and then comes straight through. There's no real pause. Sure, maybe it slows down in parts, so if players are waiting for that ball to come to them, it might slow down, but it never actually stops. And you want to make sure that the fastest part of your swing is happening just before contact and through contact. The easiest way for you to be able to tell what part is the fastest part is leave the ball out of this for now and just do your swing. And what you want to do is listen for that whoosh sound in the air and listen to where that sound is starting. Now, if that sound is starting before you would contact the ball, so somewhere back here, awesome, you've got good racket head speed. If that sound is starting when it's more out in front of you, further away, that means that your power is starting too late. In other words, when you do your swing and hitting the ball, you're putting power into the wind. You're not putting power into the ball because you're contacting the ball back here and you want to make sure that you're putting that power before the ball, into the ball and through the ball. Thank you so much for tuning into this breakdown of the Roger Federer backhand. If you got something out of it, please remember to like and subscribe and maybe send it to a friend who you think could use this advice. And I hope to catch you in the next episode.